Hello everyone and welcome to the complete and in-depth guide to the Path of Het, and the boss at the end of it, Akkha. Now, before we get started, this video is not a gear recommendation. This is a complete guide on how to deal with every mechanic on this path and boss fight in a solo. If there's any differences in teams, I'll also speak about those. People really enjoyed the Path to Scabaras and Kephri guide, and this is the most requested next path to do. I'll keep the guide similarly structured. Please note, there will be timestamps in the description on the video, so you can easily find what you need. The Path of Het is the human path. The boss at the end is a giant human, and the puzzle room is a light puzzle that consists of hitting a statue with another statue's light. And don't worry, it's not like this one. The puzzle room's randomised every time, but there are only a few set layouts. We'll cover them all. Let's hop into the game for an analysis and an in-depth explanation of the Path of Het. And welcome to the Path of Het. Now, before we get into the puzzle solutions, there's a few things to note. First things first, there is a statue outside the room and a statue in the room. Now, these statues allow you to store a pickaxe from outside the raid, and as long as you deposit it back at the end, it'll always be here. You can see what pickaxe you've got stored by what the statue is holding. Now, this is important. It wasn't important until the system update on the 26th of August 2022. And that's because the bronze pickaxe was bugged, and the bronze pickaxe always dealt the max damage, which was the equivalent of a crystal pickaxe. Now, they've nerfed it again, because obviously it was unintentional. So the best pickaxe you can get you should store here, or at least bring into the raid with you. Storing it means you can bring an extra supply, so I would recommend that. If you've only got one dragon on an iron and you don't want to use it, put a rune in here, it's fine. At the beginning of a raid, you can take the pickaxe and then it disappears from the statue, and then at the end you can deposit it and it goes back. If you've got a full inventory of supplies, then you drop one in the room and take it from the statue in the room instead. Now when you enter the room, the puzzle itself consists of walls, some statues, Het seal, and some mirrors. Now, if you right click a lot of these mirrors, a lot of them are static. So the only ones that you need to worry about are the ones at the edge of the room. The mirrors that you can pick up on every rotation and room layout are at the northwest, northeast, and southwest. These are the three that you'll always be able to pick up, and there will always be three for every rotation. The rest are static. The goal of the room is to get this light from the caster statue to hit the shield statue. Now it's worth noting, it does not have to hit the shield from the front like some people initially thought. These are the tiles that actually hit the shield, assuming there's no walls blocking it obviously. So as long as the light from the caster statue hits one of these 9 tiles, you will complete the room. Now there are a couple of other things to note before we get into the actual guide. First, the cracked walls are breakable. As you can see, if I left click this, it breaks. Now it only mines it this quick because I'm using a D-pick, and this is only at 77 mining, my main's not got good stats. Okay, so now I've got a bronze pickaxe. If we try mining the wall, as you can see, it takes a lot longer. That took 3 pickaxe swings, and if we use a dragon, it takes 1. So bear that in mind. Another obstacle to watch out for are these orbs of darkness. Now, as far as we know, they serve no purpose other than hurting your character if you get in the way. As you can see, I just took 12 damage. It's a random amount. In solos, at an entry level, it hits a lot lower. That's what I'm doing now just for testing. At higher invocation levels, they do hit upwards of like 20, so be careful. There is one more mechanic I want to go over, which is a very simple one. It doesn't happen in solos, but in teams, the static mirrors, so in this room it's these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the ones that you cannot pick up, may be dirty. If they're dirty, all it means is that they won't reflect light if they're hit. So if there is a mirror that you want to use and it's dirty, you just simply left click and clean it. When the puzzle's completed, the statue in the middle becomes mineable and all of the obstacles disappear. Now you hit on this statue a random amount depending on your mining level and the pickaxe that you're using. My max hit with the dragon pick at 77 is a 12 as you can see, but it scales up really high. People can hit 19s I believe at 99 with a D-pick, but I haven't got the exact numbers, my apologies, but higher mining, higher pickaxe, more damage. That's everything to be explained in this room. So now let's go over the solutions to each of the layouts. The first one we'll look at is this. Every single puzzle is solvable in 3 mirrors. An easy way to look at it is to see where a light can hit the final statue. So for example, if I break this wall and fire a light upwards, it will hit the final statue. And then you just fire the light around. So for this particular layout, you fire 1 south, 1 east, and then you break this wall and fire 1 north. And that is this puzzle solved. Fire this one down, this one east, this one north. This room is done. Next is this variation. If yours looks something like this, then follow this guide. For this one, it's a 2 mirror job. all you do is you fire one north and it hits the static mirror here. And then all you do is you pick up another mirror and you can either fire it down here or here. But you've got to break the wall first. Both of these work. And that's puzzle complete. Now this is a third puzzle. And as you can see, this path's blocked off by the wall, so you'll want to come in from the north side. The tricky part people find about this one though is there's a static mirror here. And this mirror actually fires into a wall, so you can't reach the statue. So the fastest way to do this one is you place a mirror here that goes upwards, and that avoids both mirrors. You pick up another mirror and you fire it east, and then you pick up the final mirror and fire it south. And that's a completion for puzzle 3. And this is layout number 4. As you can see this time the cracked walls are at the bottom, and at the top it's completely blocked off. There is a mirror already here, so we can simply break this wall, and that's already a path straight to the statue. So I pick up a mirror that would fire into that, just like so. And then all we need to do is get another mirror and direct it downwards. And that's puzzle complete. Nice and simple. Now here is puzzle layout number 5. This one looks very similar to the one earlier, but as you can see, the mirrors can change their positions. So this is the one that a lot of people got confused on, because there's a mirror firing downwards, so you assume you want to go down. But if you put a mirror here going east, here going north, and then here going west, you're actually missing a mirror because this one is a movable one. So you won't have any other mirror to go downwards. So that's not the solution. The solution, much like the room earlier, is to actually fire this north. So you ignore this red herring mirror completely, and you put a new mirror right in front of the statue that goes up. And then you might be thinking, but wait, if I rotate this mirror so it fires into the static one, then it doesn't hit the statue because there's another mirror blocking it. And that's true. So you simply just move this mirror down one. And now, a path opens up. Yes, you can't use this narrow passage anymore, but if we pick up the last mirror, we just fire it down from here. And then obviously, we do have to mine the wall just so it can hit the statue. And that's puzzle number 5 completed. And here's puzzle number 6, my favourite one. For this one, everything's already set up. You simply grab a mirror, and as you can see, this fires north. But there's already a mirror here that's hitting the statue. So all you need to do is find the tile between them, place a mirror, and that completes it. Nice and simple, right? That is my favourite one by far. Now that should be every single room layout covered. You have to bear in mind though, that the mirrors that you can't move might be in different places in the same layout. If that happens, the solve is the exact same. You can just use some of the mirrors to your advantage, and if you don't have any mirrors to use, then 3 is always enough to direct the light as shown in the previous parts. An example is this is the same room layout as puzzle 4 that we did. I'll put a side by side up now. There's a mirror there this time, so instead of making it go down yourself, you only need 2 mirrors for this, because we could simply pick this mirror up and fire this east, and then all we'd have to do is pick up another mirror and fire it north. So basically this just loses a step. Another example of a same room with different layout is this one. So this is the exact same as puzzle 2. I'll put a side by side now. But as you can see, the mirrors are in different places, so it might look a little bit confusing. But you just do the exact same thing. You fire north here, east here, and south here, and it'll hit the statue. A lot of the mirrors are red herrings. You can do every single one with 3 mirrors, I promise you. Now, I'll do one final example of a similar layout with a different solution, just so you're comfortable. This one is the exact same as puzzle number 3. But it's already firing a mirror downwards, and it's already got a mirror over here that hits the boss. So, if we just line this up and fire it east, break the wall, and then put another mirror here facing north, it hits and completes. Now that's the final one I'm going to show. There are obviously other variations with different mirror layouts, but all of the wall layouts are the same as shown. That means that you should be in a state where you can solve every single one of these puzzles now. If there's a mirror there that's already doing something you need to do, it just makes the room quicker, because then you only need to use 2 mirrors or 1 mirror. But I've showed you the solution to every room using 3 mirrors. So now, you shouldn't have a problem here. Now let's finally get onto the boss. Now, welcome to Akkha. This boss room looks very unique. It's basically a giant compass, and it's set out into 4 quadrants. There are also 4 hourglasses on the wall, but we'll get into them a little bit later. First, we'll go through the basic gameplay loops of the fight. As you can see, Akkha is praying. Now he will always pray range and melee at the beginning of the fight. When he's praying range and melee, you need to use magic on him and pray melee. When he's praying range and magic, you need to melee him and pray range. And when he's praying magic and melee, you need to range him and pray magic. To remember what you've got to pray against him, if you take a look at his prayers, there's one overlaid over the other. As you can see here, the melee prayer is layered above the range one. That means you need to pray melee. I'll put the other examples on the screen now, but when he's praying magic and range, you can see the symbol for range overlaps magic, and when he's praying magic and melee, you can see the symbol for magic overlaps melee. That's an easy way to remember how to pray against him. Now, as the fight always starts with magic, you equip your magic gear, you press teleport, you pray melee, and you just hit him. When he gets to a certain amount of health, what happens is he will spawn 4 wardens, one at every side. In the first phase, all 4 of these are attackable. What you need to do is kill the warden as fast as possible. Personally, I use a blowpipe in lower invocations. As you can see, it shreds. When this warden is killed, Akkha becomes vulnerable again, because right now he can't be hit is white. As you can see, he now turns back to normal. He's swapped his prayers, the ranged one's at the top, and he's using a range attack, so now you pray range. You put your melee gear on, and then you can hurt him. Now he's praying magic and melee, so as you can see the magic one is overlaying the melee one, so pray mage and equip your range gear. Now as you can see in this quadrant he is attackable. If I run him into another quadrant that's got a warden there, he will turn white, and that means he's invulnerable. Akkha is currently immune to your attacks, but his shadows are still disrupted. So you have to lure him to the quadrant that doesn't have a warden in. Now this is basically the entire fight. All you do is attack boss, adapt to his prayers and adapt to your styles, and then kill the next warden. And then drag him to that area, do the same thing, kill the next warden. For example, he's now nearing half health, so another warden's opened up. Now there are 4 special attacks in this fight including the hourglasses. Let me showcase each. The first is that it can turn you black. While you're black, if you run around, you will completely mark the floor every 2 tiles, or if you're walking it'll be every tile. If another player stands on one of these, you will get damaged, and each one has a slightly different effect. The red one burns you, the lightning one turns off your prayer, etc. Now you can see I've been marked again, so if I run around, for example, into the lightning one and show you, if I stand on the lightning, it disables my prayer and damages me. This is very easily avoidable. The most easy way to avoid it in both teams and a solo is simply stand still. If you run around in a solo, it's not really going to affect you, because what you do is you just don't stand back on the tiles. But if you're in a 4 to 8 man team and everyone's running around, obviously it gets pretty crazy. So I would recommend to stand still. If you need to move to get into melee distance of the boss, if you're in a team, just make sure everyone moves down the same path. Next, it's got a Simon Says special attack. This means that the icons in the middle of the room will randomly flash. For example, white, red, red. All you have to do is stand in that quadrant, and then you have about 4 ticks to move to the next. And you just got to remember which one flashed, because all the other ones you'd take damage in. That is simply all there is to that. It is worth noting, if you have on an invocation that levels up the path, for example Walk the Path or Pathfinder, every single level, as you can see at the top left, there is a level there. Every single level that Akkha is leveled up by, his Simon Says memory game will be increased by 1. For example, if this said level 1, there'd be 5 to remember. If it said level 2, there'd be 6, and if it was level 3, there'd be 7. I believe you can get this all the way up to level 6 if you have all the path ones on, meaning there'll be 10 things to remember. Good luck! Now in teams, there's one more special attack you need to look out for. He turns everybody's character model white. When this happens, you'll explode in a plus pattern. So where I'm stood now, for example, it would do this line, below me, to the east and to the west, but it does not hit your diagonals. What that means is in teams, you must all stand diagonal to each other, just like in this clip. There is another way to deal with this in teams, but I'll get through that in the tips and tricks section later. There's one more attack you need to watch out for, these hourglasses. What these do is when they charge up fully, every single quadrant that has a warden in it will cover the entire quadrant in damage. For example, watch now. And then the timer will reset. Now it only does this to quadrants with wardens in, or shadows in, sorry. So as long as there's no shadow in there, you're absolutely fine. So try to always stay in the quadrant with Akkha. Obviously you want to be in here anyway, because this is the only one where he's damageable. If all 4 wardens are alive, the hourglass attack will damage every area. So now I've gone through every special, we're just going to finish the fight. So we kill the warden, we kill the boss, and that's all there is to the base fight. So what we do now is we go through the gameplay loop of kill warden, fight Akkha, kill warden, fight Akkha. And then its final phase will begin. In its final phase, you can only use melee on it for the entire time. Now, Akkha does not attack you in this phase, all he does is stands there. The white orbs that are flying around the screen damage you, for example. Now, the best thing to do in here is pray Redemption, and try to make it so that Redemption procs. Akkha has stood still. If you don't attack him, he'll stand there forever. However, what happens is, if I hit him 3 times, 2, 3, he will move to another area of the room. In teams, however, the number of attacks is more than 3. So in solos, it's 3 as we've already stated. In duos, I believe it's also 3. In trios, it's 4. In 5-mans, it's 6s. They're the ones that I've tested. So by that logic, I'm going to assume it's team size plus 1, but it's never below 3. Now it's worth noting that multi-hit attacks, like a D-claw spec, D-dagger spec, scythe, all count on an individual hit basis. So if you're in a team of 5, you're allowed 6 attacks. If 2 people scythe the boss, it will move. So bear that in mind. And on that note, that's every mechanic in the boss fight explained. I hope it answered all your questions. Now, let's get a little look into the Invocations of Akkha. Okay, so, Invocations. As you can see, Akkha has 4 specific ones for him. I already spoke about how the walk the path invocations and the ones that level up the path affect his memory game. But otherwise, the only ones that affect the Akkha fight are these 4. First is Double Trouble. This simply means it'll do 2 special attacks at once. So what happens is, he will do his memory game and turn your entire team white, or he'll do the memory game and turn your entire team black. Now, what that means is that simply 2 are being done at once. It makes teams very difficult, because if you all are black, for example, and leaving marks on the floor as you're trying to run around and do the memory game, you can screw other people up big time. So, in solos, it is basically a free invocation though. Do note, however, that because he does the memory game more often, it does make the fight longer overall. Keep Back makes his ranged and magic attacks also do melee damage to anyone next to him. Again, this just adds damage to the fight. Stay Vigilant is a really difficult one comparatively. Akkha will randomly swap between attack styles and protection prayers rather than at set intervals. Now, this doesn't mean that he's going to swap everything about him. When you mage him, you still pray melee, when you melee him, you still pray range, and when you range him, you still pray mage. This just means that instead of swapping at every set number of attacks like he normally does, he will instead just swap randomly, so you've got to adapt and be ready for that. And finally, Feeling Special. Akkha's Detonate special attack will trigger in more directions, his memory special attack will be faster, and his trail special will spawn additional orbs. Now, when this is on, there's a very important tip and trick for dealing with the Detonate special attack. We'll get over that later, but basically, you just DD. Now, his memory attack being faster as well also means that instead of being 4 ticks to react, you have 2 instead. So you've got to basically instantly click. Let's show some of these in action. First, let's look into the special attack invocation. This makes all 3 of his specials, the Detonate one, the Trail one, and the memory game harder. Now what this means is for the memory game, instead of being 4 ticks, you've got 2 ticks to run between each quadrant, making it much tougher, twice as fast. For his Detonate attack, it does it in more directions. And for this attack, it spawns more orbs. As you can see as I'm running around, more orbs are spawning than before, which makes it a lot harder in teams. So make sure you stand still on this one. As long as you're standing still, there's nothing that changes with that. The Detonate special attack, I can't test in solos because it doesn't do it. Essentially all it does is it has additional directions. Now the memory game, as you can see, red, black, red, white, but you've got to be very quick, look. Now if you've got a raid level of 6 on Akkha and you have 10 of those, imagine how easy it is to screw up. And that's the entire special attack invocation. As I said, the Detonate that I can't test right now, it basically, I believe, just means that you have diagonals as well. So that's what I've seen on someone else's stream at least. So instead of just going horizontal and vertical, it also damages diagonally. So the best way to deal with that would be to DD. Now let's look at the invocation where it swaps prayers more often. As you can see, currently I have to melee it and pray range. And normally you'd get a lot of attacks out, but it randomly swaps right now. So if we keep an eye on its prayers, it swaps, so I've got to pray magic. Without the invocation on, it's a set amount. There's not really much to go in with this one, so I'm leaving it there, but did you see how fast it's just swapped? Now I've already got to pray range. So it's very quick sometimes, and sometimes it's longer or as long as without the invocation on. The Double Trouble invocation makes 2 specials happen at once. In solos, this is always the trail and the memory game. So for example, as you can see, I'm trailing orbs and doing the memory game at the same time. In teams, however, this could be the memory game and detonate, or the memory game and the trails. I am not sure if you can have the detonate and the trail at the same time, because I've not experienced that and I've not been sending team runs. So I'm not going to comment on that. If it can happen, it can happen. But in solos, you will always get the trail ability and the memory game. It's worth noting, it will always use its specials when it swaps prayers. Watch. There we go. So now it'll use its specials. Every single time it swaps prayers, it will do the double special. So bear that in mind. The final invitation we'll talk about is Keep Back. This means that when he does a range or magic attack, it'll also do a melee swing. Now I've took my gear off to prove this. As you can see, it's just hit me for a 20. That does mean, however, that what you can do is if you can pray melee first and then pray range, you'll actually block both hit splats. So when he swings his spear, pray melee, and then afterwards pray range and you'll block both. It makes the fight a lot harder for 10 invocation level and you'll take a lot of unnecessary damage, so honestly I don't recommend it. Well, I don't recommend it for the lower level invocations at least, just because it's unnecessary damage. Now honestly, there's not much else to talk about with Akkha. That's basically covered everything. However, there are a few tips and tricks that I've thought of that I'd like to share. One helpful tip is because you always mage the first part of the fight and he melees you, you can actually kite him around the room and not take any damage. This is because the shadows aren't up yet, which means that he's vulnerable and takes damage in every quadrant. I'll show you what I mean. As you can see, he can't actually get to me to deal any damage. And what's important about this is that he only changes attack styles on his attacks. It's not based on how many attacks you do, it's based on how many attacks he does. Obviously with the invocation on, this is different. But for example, if I run around the room hitting the warden, he will never change styles unless he gets a hit in. So if I staminaed up and started hitting the wardens like this, he's not going to change off melee, which could help for the early parts of the fight. The next helpful tip is when doing the memory game, equip some ranged armor or magic armor and hit a warden as you're doing this. As you can see, without the invocation on, you can get a hit every single movement. So make sure that you're doing this to not waste time. And honestly, for that one, that's it for the tips and tricks. I can't really think of anything else that's too helpful. It's a pretty straightforward fight and there's not too much to change. The only other helpful tip and trick, honestly, would be that when you are detonating, which I can't show on this video because I've not got anyone on right now, that means when you're flashing white, in teams, you need to DD, especially if you've got the invocation on to make specials harder, because that will be a lot harder to avoid. All that means is you all have to go and stand on the same tile. When you're flashing black, do not move. When you're flashing white in a team, all stand on the same tile. And that'll avoid every single piece of damage from its special attacks. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the guide. I hope I've covered everything. If there's anything that I've not covered that you think I should have, please let me know in the comments. This is all just from my experience. I've not looked anywhere else or anything like that. This is just what me and my clanmates have figured out. If anybody has anything else that might help me, I'm happy to hear it in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching. Love you all and leave you, and I'll see you next time. Bye!